Bill O'Reilly decided to attack the media over their coverage of the Dylann Roof terrorist attack in Charleston. He's mad that some people are daring to bring up race and have a conversation about race and white supremacy in America.
They're afraid because if they do challenge, they may be labeled anti-black bigots. So the media in the USA is intimidated. The only TV network that does not accept the blatant dishonesty that America is a white supremacist nation is Fox News. And some of us on this channel get viciously attacked for standing up for the truth. Last night on my computer, the Yahoo News service carried anti-Fox defamation from all kinds of crazy left-wing websites. It was brutal. Yahoo just throwing this garbage out there with no balance, giving these smear merchants a worldwide platform. You rarely see any conservative points of view on Yahoo. Where's Daily Caller? Where's Breitbart? Where's WorldNet Daily? Where's Newsmax? In the world of Yahoo News, they don't exist. Yet every anti-Fox statement Jon Stewart makes is headlined. It's disgraceful. So that's why these anti-American race baiters spew their invective with glee, because there's little downside for them, with the exception of terrible ratings. As Talking Points has reported, the no-spin truth is that there are anti-black bigots in America. Of course there are. But to say the entire country is defined by them is a gross lie. That would be like saying that African Americans are all defined by Farrakhan or the Black Panthers. Most Americans, no matter what color they are decent, fair-minded people. But there are problems in the African American precincts, especially in the inner city. However, the problems have little to do with white people, rather a corrosive culture that does not confront child neglect and antisocial behavior on the streets. That's what's driving poverty and dysfunction. And the excuse that slavery, Jim Crow, and other historical injustices should now define how black citizens are treated is insane. Barack Obama, a poor boy of mixed race, rose up with little parental help and became the president. Did these anti-American folks who are exploiting Charleston miss that? Just today, Governor Bobby Jindal of Louisiana, a man of Indian descent, announced he's running for president. Dr. Ben Carson, who overcame poverty to become a brilliant surgeon, is also running for president. And the far-left smear merchants have the nerve, the gall to say America is a white supremacist nation, and the press does nothing about it? Fox News is attacked when we report the truth? Well, you want a war, you got a war. I'm not going to sit here any longer and take this garbage.
Oh, you're so macho. You're so macho in that air-conditioned, comfy studio. You're getting a little loud there, man. You're sweating a little bit. Should you pause and take a break, have the makeup girl come in and powder your forehead a little bit? Calm down, dude. Like, Bill O'Reilly thinks he thinks like he's some sort of a hero. And he thinks he's telling truth to power and standing up for the common man. But you're not speaking truth to power. You are the power, and you're talking down to poor people. That's what you're doing. And also at the end there, as people rightly pointed out online, they're like, did Bill O'Reilly just declare a race war? You want a war? You got one. I'm not going to take this anymore. Whoa, buddy, what are you talking about? Now, obviously, I don't think he's literally calling for a race war. Of course not. But what he's doing is he's saying, I am going to viciously attack liberals who want to talk about race. That's what he's saying. By the way, as if he doesn't do that already. He's in the middle of a rant doing exactly that. And he's like, I'm going to do this. I know, you're doing it right now. You don't need to say you're going to do it. I see you doing it right now. But see, the thing about Bill O'Reilly is, as many pundits have accurately pointed out, it's like he actively avoids nuance. So I didn't have time to play the full 8-minute clip, but earlier on there, he shows a bunch of clips of people on MSNBC and people elsewhere saying that America is a racist nation. But of course he takes little 6-second, 13-second chunks and splices them next to each other. And he tries to give the false impression that people are saying no, it's a white supremacist nation and everybody's like Dylann Roof. No, but see, that's the thing, Bill. Nobody's saying that. You set up a straw man and then you slapped it down. Nobody is saying No liberals are saying that every white person in America equals Dylan Roof. That's not what anybody's saying. You're actively avoiding the nuance because you know the nuance makes your opponent's argument true. And what is that argument, by the way? That racism is a complex thing. Racism has many layers and many different levels. So when people say America's a racist nation, or when people say white supremacy is an issue, listen to the rest of what they say, which is usually that makes up a much smaller percentage than what it used to be, but the way racism manifests today is not Bull Connor style with fire hoses and dogs sicking on black people, but it's systemic issues. It's things that get in the way of black people getting a job, and it's casual assumptions that people make about black people that make it so that they don't get treated equally in society. So, for example, we've spoken about the resume study before. When you have this exact same resume and job history, and one resume has a black-sounding name and the other one has a white-sounding name, the white name gets 50% or more hits and callbacks. The only way to describe that is race, Bill. I'm sorry. I know you like to, no racism. But I'm giving you an example where that's the only thing that explains it. You can ignore it if you want to, but the problem still exists. And then there's the bicycle study. It was an investigative report from, I think it was ABC, where you had a white guy trying to unchain a bike, having trouble. What happens is, people who are walking by, they just continue to walk by, nobody pays attention. When it's a white woman having trouble unchaining a bike, people go out of their way to help the white woman. When it's a black guy having trouble unchaining a bike, what's the immediate assumption that everybody makes? They think he's stealing it. Again, how do you explain that? Or how about the online sales study? If you have a black hand holding a product versus a white hand holding a product, people are way more likely to go to the white hand, even with all the other information being the same. Not to mention that, white people and black people use drugs at similar rates, but black people get arrested 4 times more often. White people sell drugs more than blacks do, but blacks get arrested more for selling drugs. I mean, for fuck's sake, there are still, as Jon Stewart pointed out the other day, there are still roads and schools in the South named after Confederate generals who were fighting to continue slavery. And black kids go to these schools and drive on these roads. There's a systemic problem, Bill. Now, again, the overt racism, the blatant racism, the pro-Confederate Dylan Roof style is not, the main thing today throughout America that people are worried about. There aren't nearly as many lynch mobs as there were in the early 1900s and the late 1800s. But that's the thing, nobody's saying there is. We're saying we need to have a conversation about race because we do need to have a conversation about race because racism manifests itself today in various different ways, and it is a systemic problem. And by the way, even that problem is bigger than Bill O'Reilly's letting it on to be. He's trying to make it seem like, there's some crazy white supremacists and some crazy black supremacists. But what's the difference? The history tied with the white supremacists in America because at one point they did have institutional power. For fuck's sake, today there's still 160 chapters that we know of the KKK, and that doesn't even include white nationalist groups, of which there are many more. And let's remember the CCC, the Council of Conservative Citizens, which was set up to stop desegregation. They donated to Republican politicians. Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Mia Love, who's a black Republican, they donated to them because they know the ideology that they stand for. They know that they're in favor of no policies that would actually help black people. So again, they do have more power than Bill O'Reilly is making it out to be. But also, just a few more points to make here real quick. He uses the standard Republican excuse. I found a few black people that made it, therefore there's no racism. For fuck's sake, in apartheid South Africa, some black people made it. Did that mean that apartheid wasn't an issue? Did that mean that it wasn't a problem? Obama, Bobby Jindal, Ben Carson. Now, again, what is he leaving out? He's leaving out that, God forbid, any of those guys got caught at one point, like Obama, part of the Choom game, he was smoking weed. If he was caught smoking weed at one point, his life would have been drastically different. Whereas if you're a white guy and you get caught doing some kind of drug, if you're George W. Bush, for example, all the rumors of him doing cocaine like nobody's business, going AWOL, right? Well, then it's not as big of a deal. You can get caught and you're still president in some cases. So, again, there's massive differences, but I also love when he does the most obvious false equivalence the world's ever seen. He's like, Yahoo News had something that was against Fox. How dare they? We need balance. Where's the Daily Caller? Where's WorldNet Daily? No, here's the difference, you jackass. The Daily Caller and WorldNet Daily and all the conservative sites you named, they don't report facts. They don't actually do information. The things that they talk about are not true. So Yahoo can't cover it because then they would be doing a disservice to the idea of news. Whereas a guy like Jon Stewart, like him or dislike him, the guy's both funny and he happens to make a lot of really good and factual points. That's why. But see, they demand to be treated equally even when their substance is not equally true. Which is a trick, because then again, you're skewing the debate in their favor. That would be a conservative bias if you give them coverage when what they're saying is false. So Bill O'Reilly, of course, that goes over his head. And then finally he goes, well, racism, he essentially says, racism's not a big problem anymore. And to the extent that it is a problem, blame the blacks. It's their fault. You heard him. He started going on that same rant that he always goes on. The culture and the community and the lack of the fathers, and they don't, the rap music and things like that. Because when it boils down to it, that's what Bill O'Reilly really thinks the issue is. And notice, he flipped it at one point there, where he talks about how it's the culture and it's who they are and how they act which leads to the poverty. When, of course, the reality is more likely what? The poverty comes first because they've been systemically held down, and as a result of the poverty, then the culture comes about out of the poverty and out of the degradation and out of the fact that they've been left behind and suppressed for so long and they haven't had an equal opportunity at success. So he flips it in his head, and why does he do that? Because he needs to blame them. He doesn't feel responsible for it because he doesn't understand the way the economy works and the way society works, so he needs to find a way to take the blame off of a white power structure and put it, it's their fault. Look, they listen to 2 Chainz, blame them.